Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode, I think, 5 of our Member Stories series. And today I have another bonus couple. Anna and Tim Cragin are here with us. So go ahead and say hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
And you will hear a tiny person in the background because in true family entrepreneur fashion, their daughter is quietly playing and singing underneath the desk.
Or maybe not so quietly.
Because we're in different time zones, so it's not quite bedtime there yet. But she's all right for now, and you might see her pop in and out during the live stream, and you might see a parent pop out or whatever. We're going to go with the flow because that's what we do as parents. So why don't you guys give everyone sort of a background on you and who you are and what you're all about?
Sure. Do you want me to start?
By all means.
All right. Well, I'm Anna, and I am the entrepreneur out of the two of us. My husband has a 9-to-5, but my main business is helping other entrepreneurs get more stuff done. What else do I say about myself? Well, we have a daughter. She is 3, and she is singing right now. And my husband is the reason that I actually can work on my business because he is very nice and supportive in giving me this time during the evenings where I can do my thing.
That is awesome. So when did Anna, you said you had, you have 2 businesses, or you had 2 businesses?
I used to, yeah.
When did that all kind of change for you?
Well, so I had an offline business, and I created jewelry. I made jewelry by hand, and I sold it at art markets. But when I got pregnant with my daughter, I realized I couldn't do that anymore. So I moved it online, and I kind of had a double business with selling the jewelry online, but then also creating tutorials and kind of teaching other people how to create jewelry. And for a while, I was juggling both of these. Hey, Ashley.
Hi.
And I was kind of juggling the 2 businesses, and that's really when it was kind of crunch time for me because at that time Emma was like a newborn, right?
Right.
Like she had just been born, and I was juggling these 2 businesses, well, Tim helped me a lot during that time with, trying to keep her occupied for maybe like an hour at a time where I could do some stuff. I did a lot of stuff while she was napping, which is not a good idea. Do not recommend. And I was kind of juggling the two businesses, and that's really when I worked out, how to batch stuff, how to be more efficient. I created a plan. I was never a planner. I was never organized, but I had to because I only had an hour and now I only have 2 hours. So it's relatively better.
Yeah. In the early days. I'm sorry.
Oh, you were going to go ahead and start talking anyways. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was going to say in the early days, it seemed like there was an invisible tether between Anna and our toddler, and you could stretch it out a bit, but it was always there. And whenever we had to make time for something, it was like eventually that was going to contract and they would have to be brought back together.
Yes.
And so how is it for you, Tim, as the non-entrepreneur, to kind of see that from the other side?
Let's see. So
it's okay. You can tell the truth.
It's a different perspective because in my 9-to-5 job, I try to put a bit of distance between myself and the company that I'm working for because there's always more things that are going to demand my time, and I try not to let it stress me out. Like, so I come back home and I'm like, okay, it's the time that I've set aside to, play with my toddler, when we talk about Anna's businesses, then even though I'm not an active part in it, it's interesting to feel a lot more engaged in what's going on, and excited about what it could lead to.
Yeah, I think it's important for everyone to hear that other perspective, because we talk about it a lot. Tom is the true entrepreneur in our relationship, and I was the one who had not a thought in my brain about being an entrepreneur, but because of our circumstances and because of what we wanted out of life, it was kind of a choice that I had to make, and have now jumped in with both feet. But so I have some of those memories and some of those emotions from when I didn't really understand or wasn't a part of the businesses. So I can definitely relate to that. But it's nice to have that. It's nice that Anna has that support from you, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs that don't have that. So kudos to you.
Yeah, I consider myself lucky.
You are. So let's talk about, a lot of people online, they like to show the best sides of being a business owner and being an entrepreneur, and everything is so fun all the time and everything's awesome. What has been your biggest struggle so far in being an entrepreneur, in being a parent, maybe both together? And you could both answer if you want, but.
Yeah, I think, Timmy, you should definitely answer this question. Because I'm honestly curious, what has been the biggest one? But for me, the biggest challenge, I guess, in being an entrepreneur is sometimes justifying some of the investments that I want to make in the business to my investor. Because the mindset is just so different. And like, you should comment on this too, but the mindset is so different in that, like, I know that if I'm purchasing a course, or, I have a business coach now and we're investing in the business coach, I know that, like, what I want to get out of it. And I know that it's going to move my business forward, but that may not always look like such a sure thing. From somebody like you, who isn't kind of like around other people who talk about it so much. What do you think?
Right, and that is definitely something that comes up for discussion and negotiations. When Anna identifies something that she thinks would be a good investment, I have to make sure that I'm approaching things with an open mindset, and I try not to disrespect what she's doing or what she's asking for, but sometimes if I'm in a cranky mood, it'll definitely come out as like, well, I mean, couldn't you just look that up? Or it doesn't seem too important to me. But when I take the time to ask, like, okay, so what is it that you'd be getting out of the course? How much time do you think it would save you, or what opportunities would it open up? How would we, sometimes it's a discussion of how do you think you would measure what you get out of that course? And then maybe let's revisit it after we've gotten a couple of months into it to talk about whether it's working.
And I think it's incredibly valuable for Anna to have, but also as entrepreneurs, a lot of us tend to be, well, not myself, but Tom, tend to be more of the visionary and the big picture, and here's all the things I want to do. But to have somebody like you are open-minded about the business itself, but you're willing to ask those difficult questions and those points of conflict, and especially when you're married, it can become such a big issue of communication and the blurred lines between the business and the personal stuff. But it's so important to have that perspective. And I think it probably makes Anna a better entrepreneur, because she has you next to her saying, okay, well, what are you going to get out of that? Let's make sure we're investing our money in the best course that you can to learn what you need to know.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely made me consider the investments that I'm making in a different way, to make sure to quantify things. It's definitely made me smarter, because I think, whenever I'm considering spending money on something, I'm always thinking well, what would Tim say? Would he, what kind of metrics I would want to get from it? Would you like this? Okay. So it's, at first it was really frustrating because I saw all my business friends. You're like, oh yeah, I'm buying this $2,000 course and I'm getting a business coach for like, this much a month. And I'm just like, oh, like, how am I gonna ask for that? Like, I can't just say, well, I want a business coach because everybody else has a business coach, like that, that's not gonna fly.
Well, you can, it just might not go over very well.
Right? Exactly. And it didn't used to. Like, I used to get really frustrated when I couldn't convey how excited I was about doing something in my business because you aren't like part of it, which is not to say like you can't be if you want to be, but because you're not in it, then it made it harder for me to convey my excitement about certain things to you.
Sure, I could definitely see that. But I'd say there's two big scarce resources. So money is one, and then time, of course, is the other. And I think we really benefited from a frank conversation about how we were going to kind of divvy up time and make sure that we had scheduled in time for each other to get away and, go to the gym. And I think it's crucial for not going stir crazy.
Yeah,
so,
it definitely is.
So we came up with a plan for what days I would go to the gym, what days Anna would go to the gym, and it kind of set the basis for, okay, when there are things that come up that we're really excited about that we want to do, then we go to the negotiations about like, okay, well, I'd really like to, get out and go see this concert or, go on, eat dinner with this person and meet with them. And having those lines of communication open is really vital.
Yeah, well, and you've touched on a huge, that's a point that Tom and I are very big on, is the communication. It's hard enough just being in the marriage part, but then when you add the entrepreneurship plus the 9-to-5 and the different worlds that those are, and then you add kids into the mix, and now you're parents, it's a mess, and it can be a bigger mess if you don't communicate with each other constantly and you continually improve your communication with each other. So that's definitely a great point. And we often, tell people like, hey, I know that it's an unpopular thing and that it seems pretty simple, but communication is key in all three of those worlds.
Yes, definitely. And it's been really good for me to keep in mind to tell him about the schedule. So, I do my planning on Mondays. So I look at my calendar, I see what's coming up. If I have something that is during the day, because sometimes I have to record podcasts or podcast interviews or like go on somebody's show and it's during the day. So I have to ask him, could you possibly come home? Could you keep an eye on our daughter so that we don't have this going on all of my guest interviews? And sometimes if I forget to tell him that I have to ask at the last minute and then he has other plans and it just doesn't work. So I think communicating in advance about the schedule and kind of like what I would like to do that week and has been really key.
Well, and I think I want to dive in there because that's one of the things that a lot of people are so attracted
me.
Are we back?
Yes, we're back.
Okay. Yay! Internet, don't fail me now. I know a lot of people are very interested to hear how you were able to only work on your business for 2 hours a day and be so efficient without having a lot of time, because that is a big struggle, especially for parents or, people that are working from home and don't have time away from their kids or time away from doing all those other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole thing. Okay, hang on. What did you drop? What did you drop? Don't touch the microphone. Here we go. Yeah, so my whole thing and my whole current business where I teach other people precisely that, how to do that, came about because I only had an hour to 2 hours to work on my business in the early days with her. And and it was really out of necessity that I had to figure it out. Because before my previous business, I could take, whole 8-hour days. For most of the day, I wouldn't really do much, which the research shows is kind of close to a 9 to 5, 8-hour day, where you only work for like 4 hours and the rest of the time you're chatting or you're taking breaks. I'm not belittling what you do. I'm sure you work all the time, but in aggregate, the research shows that. So, well, because you really can't focus for 8 hours.
Yeah, straight. You have to take some breaks.
Yeah, you have to take some breaks, and you have to switch up what you're doing, which is why, honestly, I think 2 hours is the perfect amount of time for me to work, even though I probably could work more now if I, didn't go to the gym. If I could probably work up to 4 hours a day. But I choose not to do that because, well, first of all, I don't believe that your business should be your whole life. You should be able to have a life outside of that. And the other reason too is a simple fact that work expands in whatever time you allow for it. So the converse can also be true, is that you can make your work fit into the time that you allow for it as well. So for me, the key to being able to do, to run my business, and for me, running my business really hinges on consistency, consistently producing content, consistently networking, consistently doing visibility work, such as coming onto these interviews. And it's the only reason that I'm able to do this is because I've learned batching, and I batch to a high degree. I batch everything. I batch my planning to batch. And that has really been the key. So because I work 2 hours a night, it comes out to, I believe, 10 hours a week. Oops. Because I work 5 days a week with the 2 hours. And then like the other 2 days, I still do things, but I don't work so long those other days. And so basically I batch by weeks. So I have a weekly theme. So like this theme this week is all about my products and services. So I'm improving my client processes. I've just released a new training in my membership site, that kind of stuff. And that is my sole focus for this week. And having just one focus makes it really easy for when I sit down to work. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm not ruffling through my papers and notes, trying to find my to-do list. And then when I find my to-do list, I go down the list and kind of pick and choose what I want to work on that day, which is basically how this is a very good way to waste time and end up on Facebook because you're so frustrated that you don't have a plan beforehand. Yeah. And I mean, I say all of this with love because I have been there.
As we all have.
Yeah, right? It's just that when my daughter came into our lives, I had to figure it out. I couldn't spend even, 10 minutes on Facebook when I was wanting to work on something else. If I wanted to see results in my business, I couldn't do that anymore. So eventually the priority of building my business pushed the priority of scrolling Facebook down on the list.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Is that with Emma around, I've noticed that my ability to focus on like work at home is shot with Emma around. Like I can still go into work, and when I'm physically in the office, focus just fine. But I've found that like even if Emma is sleeping, I tend to be much more easily distracted these days. I feel like part of it is just like, oh, she's asleep. What should I do?
You just utter the words of every parent everywhere. Yeah. They're asleep. What do we do with our free time?
Right?
It's so valuable. Why don't I just waste it by scrolling through my Facebook feed for an hour?
That totally happens. Tom and I, we often send our two kids to my parents any chance we can get for them to take them overnight. So we did that one night, and it was on like a Friday, and they picked them up from school and took them to their house. So like we literally didn't have children for an entire evening, and we didn't know what to do with ourselves. The house was so empty, and we had like so many hours. Like we got to 8 o'clock, and we're like, oh my gosh, it's only 8 o'clock. And we still have hours before we have to go to bed, and we can go to bed whenever we want because there's no children to wake us up at 5 in the morning. What did we do? What did we do with all this time before we had kids? So I definitely can relate to that feeling.
And why didn't we have a violent, scary movie picked out ahead of time that we can't watch when she's around?
Yeah, that always gets us, doesn't it? We're like, man, I knew there was a movie that we wanted to watch that we couldn't watch because Emma was there. But where is it now? Where is it now?
What's on our queue?
You need a list.
5-0 goes west. No.
I'm so glad Netflix finally made profiles so that you don't have to have all of the cartoons on your profile. It can be separate. Oh, that's too funny. No, but I want to jump back and talk about something you said, Anna, and it's that you choose to work that way. You choose to take those 2 hours and work solidly, and you pick themes and you batch content, and that's what works for you. And I think that is so important for people to take away from this, because we're all trying to find that easy button. And to be honest, there isn't one. There is no easy button. You have to go out and look for a process or a system or a method that's going to work for you in your business and in your life. So, I mean, the fact that you can do that, and I mean, I'm sure there's tons of people out there that want to know how to do that. It's possible. She's doing it. But then, there's a ton of people that are doing it in different ways, and they're still doing what they need to do in their business and for their life. I was just talking to somebody on a podcast, and she was saying, like, she and her husband have this agreement. She is not a morning person. So she no longer, we're getting tons of likes and hearts. She no longer tries to get up and get the kids breakfast and get them ready and be around. She gets her mommy time in the morning. So she sleeps in, she takes a shower, she gets up and she works until 2 p.m. And then she takes over and has the kids, and they're home, when they get home from school or whatever. Then she's present with them for the entire evening, and she does not touch work. Yeah. And I said, that's awesome for you. Like, that you have figured that out, and that it works for your family, and that your husband is on board with it. Like, that is awesome. Congratulations. So I think it's important that we're all out there, and we know ourselves well enough to know what's going to work for us, and we know what our family needs and what our business needs, and that we can do that. There are processes that you can put in place. There are systems. The tools don't really matter. It's the systems and the processes, and you put them where you need them.
Exactly. And I love that you said that, it is possible, because I'm doing it. And not only am I doing it, my clients are doing this too. So I know that this works. And I'm so glad that you brought up the distinction too between tools and processes, because those are two very different things. Yeah. You can use the same process with different tools, but it's a system, right? So what you said about your friend that you were doing a podcast with, about how she has figured out what time she is by herself, what time she's working, what time she's present with her family. That is exactly what I have done as well. Is I basically looked at my typical day, and my typical day it starts at 10 a.m. because my daughter is a night owl, it starts at 10 a.m. and then it ends at like 1 a.m. So I'm
sure there are other parents out there that are nodding their heads right now.
Yeah. So by the time that we wake up, my husband's already gone to his job. So we start our day. I make us breakfast. We hang out. I take her out. We play, and it goes on until he comes home, which is about 5:30. We're really lucky in that he comes home on time from his job. I know that's not the case for a lot of people. But yeah, and then after he comes home is kind of time that I can spend however I want, right? I could hang out with them. I could do my own thing. I could, so when we were thinking about, well, when can I have some time to work on my business? And when can I have some time to go to the gym and to have kind of like my own time to work on my hobbies and all of that? We kind of decided that we're going to have, I'm getting a lot of echo, so I'm sorry if I'm like,
no, you're not echoing on my end.
Okay, all right. Well, just me then. Perfect. But yeah, so when we were talking about that, and we discussed how to manage all of that, because my husband does Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I mean, he can put you in a pretzel. It's pretty impressive. And yeah, right. Don't mess with this guy. Don't let the smile fool you. He can kick you in the head and then wrestle you to the ground. And for my part, I like going to yoga, and I've just started belly dancing this year as well. So and I also have other hobbies, like I make my own clothes, and
I forgot about that.
Crafty.
I wish you mentioned that in your bio.
Yeah. So when we were talking about, well, how are we going to handle this? When is he going to go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Because you can't bring her to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Maybe when she's a little older, she can start learning.
Right. And I could bring her with me to yoga, but that would mean that I would be playing with her and not actually doing yoga. So we kind of talked about it, and we're like, okay, well, how about, I go to classes right when he comes home, come back, have dinner, work on my business, and then have the rest of the evening, which is like a couple hours before he goes to sleep. He goes to sleep before our daughter does. so
does Tom sometimes. Either right before or like right when the kids go to sleep. And then I get the quiet house to myself, so I have no problems with it.
Nice.
And we should mention that was part of the time negotiations.
Yeah.
Was that initially I would stay up for as late as Emma would, but a lot of times I would be late into work, and I would feel obliged to work late. And I hadn't realized it, but Anna much preferred I just excuse myself, go to sleep, get to work on time, and get home on time was much more important to her. So because we had that conversation, I knew that was the priority.
See, there's that communication sneaking in again.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I almost forgot.
Yeah,
that was a big part of it.
Yeah, that was a huge part.
She was not happy if I was like, oh yeah, I'll be home by 6. No big deal, right? Chasing toddler around.
In her mind. Yeah, it's a big deal. All right, wait. So I'm going to pause because we have a ton of questions popping in.
Oh, awesome.
Ashley Grant wants to know, do you have an assistant as well, or is it all you?
Currently, it's just me. I can't wait to get an assistant, though, because I have those SOPs ready to go.
Yeah, that's what we like to hear.
Yep.
And then Naja says hi. Also, Ashley wants to know if you use anything special to promote yourself on autopilot. I'm so filled with questions.
So, promote myself on autopilot. Well, I guess the biggest kind of passive promotion that I do is I'm really active in Facebook groups. So that's kind of like the in the background promotion that kind of goes on for me. I'm not sure it's like autopilot. I don't know if she means kind of like automated webinars or anything. I don't do anything like that. So basically, what has worked for me really well so far is to find Facebook groups that are really interesting to me, that I really jive with the people in there, and I'm just in there every day. And when I say I'm in there every day, I'm not sitting on my phone all day long being in Facebook groups, because I think that's a misunderstanding that people sometimes have when they hear about strategies for how to promote yourself in Facebook groups, is that they think it's really time consuming. I spend probably 10 minutes total per day in Facebook groups. I don't scroll the Facebook feed. I have shortcuts to and no more than 5 groups that I go to. And I just go to that group. I scroll and, see kind of what's going on, comment on a few things, and then immediately go to the second group, and so on and so forth in a list. So it's very organized. I don't find myself wasting time trying to look for things or try to filter out personal stuff from the feed to business stuff. I just go straight to the Facebook groups and do it there. And that has been working out the best for me, honestly, because with time, the admins of the group start noticing me, and they reach out to me and they find out more about what I do, and then there's usually an opportunity to work together. And that's honestly like when I launched my business, I didn't have a website, I didn't have a sales page, but I got hired right away by one of these people that ran a group that I was really active in to create a course for their program. And then I also got clients for like one-on-one clients from another group, and now members on a different membership site from another group where I did like a challenge and all of these kinds of things. So to me, like building relationships with other people has been like hands down the biggest promotional strategy. And the funny thing is that it happens almost on autopilot because you can quickly respond to a message from somebody. It takes not even 2 minutes, and you don't have to take this chunk of time. And I see Nat just said Pomodoro, the Facebook suite, 25 minutes, and that's it. Yeah, exactly.
It's a new productivity method, everyone. Pomodoro Facebook. You don't open your feed, you Pomodoro those Facebook groups.
Yeah, exactly. I also used to really love to use the Facebook Groups app.
Yep.
But it hasn't been working for me lately. It's not updating like my group things, and it's glitchy. So I've just been using the shortcuts on my home screen, but it's a home screen, not my. Oh my goodness, that is loud.
Try to direct that away from the microphone.
Yeah, there you go.
The child the microphone.
But yeah, so with the main Facebook app, I created shortcuts to those. I think it's actually 3 groups only that I am really active in right now. 3 or 4. And it's on a home screen that's not my main home screen. So I'm not tempted to just go in there to just kind of see what's going on. I wait for that time where I can really go in and focus on responding. And pro tip, for me, it's when my daughter's on the potty, because guess what? She doesn't need me when she's just sitting there on the potty.
That is awesome.
So yeah, exactly. Not just says she's prompting you. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that is a huge piece of advice right there for anyone in the online space that is doing the whole Facebook group networking and meeting people and trying to put the value out there. I think that's an important thing to remember is you can't be everywhere all at once. So pick those solid, 4 or 5 groups that you want to show up in and Pomodoro it, take 25 minutes and only go in and do what you can. And if you have more than, 2 hours a day, which is what Anna's working with, then maybe you have a couple Facebook Pomodoros, like in the morning, one at lunch and one at night. And that's the only times that you go in so that, as Naja said, you don't get caught down the Facebook rabbit hole and scrolling the newsfeed, which, let's be honest, it happens to all of us, myself included.
Oh, it happens to me too.
I'm going to enact that method myself. I'm going to put a little timer so that I get a reminder it's time to do the Facebook Pomodoro, and then I don't touch it again until my lunch break or whatever that may be. I love that piece of advice.
Yeah, and also I just thought of something in that we were talking about, the different phases of your day, is that you can use that to help your time blocking too. So like for me, I have certain rules for what happens depending on how Emma is acting. So if she is kind of, being quiet by herself and kind of playing, or she goes into another room and she doesn't really need me, then I can, I do household chores. So I clean up the sink, I do laundry, I look at what else I can do around the house while she's, folding laundry. That's probably going to be a task tomorrow at some point because I just did all the laundry today. Aren't you proud of me? And when she asks to nurse, I read while I nurse her. So that way I also get in my reading time. And I alternate between fiction and nonfiction so that I learn something, but then I also have fun. And when she's on the potty, it's my Facebook time. I think it could be a really good idea to keep track of what are those I call them event delimiters, because they kind of break up your day in a way that's not by the clock, but it's based on what else is happening. So if you create a rule, for instance, when it says oh, my kid is playing by themselves, I'm going to quickly jump in to the Facebook group and see what's going on there, you know?
Yep.
And then
Or I'm
when
gonna unload the dishwasher.
yeah, exactly, right? And then when your kid comes back and they want your attention, you kind of know already that that's going to happen. So you can plan to just put your phone down. And, you know, like I keep my phone actually next to like her potty so that I don't look at it during the rest of the day, you know, so I'm not tempted.
That is discipline right there.
Yeah, well, so discipline is such a loaded word though, because people think that they either have it or they don't. And I think that you need to make it easy for yourself to be disciplined, right? So that's part of it as well. But yeah, so just paying attention to how your day is going and how it's kind of broken up by events that naturally happen in your life. I think that's a great way to set up some structure and some time blocking. So because I know a lot of people say time blocking doesn't work for them.
I gotta share this.
Ashley says, "Are kids the real productivity secret?"
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. Because I mean, I think for most people, when they have kids, their kids are the priority in their life, right? They are why they're building their business. If they're
to work around the children.
Exactly. So I think like having kids kind of puts your priorities in order. Whereas, you know, like when I was single and when I didn't have kids, I was like, oh, what shall I do today? Oh, whatever I feel like it. You know, like whatever. I got all the time in the world. Do you remember that time?
Seems impossible now.
It's a distant memory.
Yeah.
Right? But now I'm like, all right, Emma seems like she's about to go off and play by herself, or maybe I feel like I can sneak away and like do laundry. So like, what is the biggest, like most important thing that I could do at that moment?
Well,
you know,
and back to you guys figuring out the difference in your time schedules, because that's something that Tom and I just figured out ourselves was we have that funny Facebook thing, like, are you a night owl or are you a morning person? And we are total opposites, similar to you guys. He is a morning person, so he will go to bed early and get up, and he, you know, gets up with the kids and gives them something to eat, and he'll sit at the laptop and work, and if they're not awake yet, he gets extra work time. I am totally the night owl. I cannot for the life of me wake up early on purpose. If I absolutely have to, like if we have an early flight somewhere, or if, you know, we have an early doctor's appointment or like something, I can do it. I just really don't like to. So instead of trying to force myself into that uncomfortable thing that doesn't feel right, we've just accepted that fact, and he gets up early and I stay up late. But now I know that, so I can schedule tasks at night that I can sit on the laptop and do on the couch if I want. Or maybe it's mindless work and I can watch a TV show while I'm creating images in Canva or whatever that may be. So I think that's important for, you know, people to think about that. Like, are you a night owl or a morning person? Work that into your schedule. Is your spouse the opposite of you? Work that into your schedule. What are your kids doing? Are they home with you all day? Work that into your schedule.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because the night owl and the morning person, because he's not really a morning person, right? I mean, you're more of a night owl, but you're forced to be a morning person because of your job. And like, honestly, that's why I want my business to grow too, is because my dream is for him to be able to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. So he doesn't have to go at 8 o'clock, so he can take a nap in the afternoon if he wants to, because you really like doing that, and you feel bad doing it at work, you know, like, right?
That's true. I'm not exactly sure which of those things to respond to, though.
Do you want to tell them about the times that I wake up early?
Anna takes no joy in life when she wakes up early.
Are you the
neither do the people around her.
Because it's totally me. I'm like the most angry person ever if I have to get up earlier than I planned. And Tom says, yes, I am in bed. Because Ashley said, is Tom in bed now? Don't lie. Oh, man. And Ashley says her biggest takeaway from this live is clearly her hubby and her are not efficient enough. I'm glad we helped you see the light, Ashley. Oh my goodness. It has been so much fun talking to you guys. Before we wrap it up, I want to make sure that people know where to find you. And then also if you have any closing thoughts or things that you want to share you have the floor.
Awesome. Yeah, so you can find me at freeefficiency.com or facebook.com/thetimedoc. I am in the middle of rebranding, so like kind of both are on there right now. So I can go back and post a link in the comments to all of that. But yeah, the best way to get in touch with me is to just send me a private message on Facebook. I check my others folder all the time, and yeah. So if you have if anybody has any questions about what they've heard on the live, or they kind of want to bounce some ideas off of me, feel free to send me a private message. And I guess in my closing thought to this live is because I always like to give people like one actionable thing that they can implement. And if you really haven't thought about like your schedule or when you would like to get work done and kind of like be really proactive about it, the very first baby step is to track your time. So just track not just like hour by hour what you're doing, but what happens before and what happened after some event, and like keep track of like what prompted a switch in what you were doing. Even if it's going from work to scrolling on Facebook, what was the trigger for that? Like maybe you are tired, maybe like your eyes are tired, maybe you need a bathroom break, all of those kinds of things. And to just have that data for yourself for like a couple of weeks, I think that could be really eye-opening into seeing where your time goes, and then also where you want proactively your time to go, and then structure everything that you do in your business around that.
I love that. Ashley says, no, then I have to be honest if I track.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
That because I did that at one point. I sat and tracked it was after we had our son, and I felt like I was completely unproductive all the time. I wasn't getting anything done. And Tom's like, here, track your time for a week, and then you can look back and see all these things you're doing. So I did, and it was eye-opening, like where I was spending all my time. Like, no wonder I'm not getting anything done. I have a newborn, and I'm trying to run a household and run businesses. Like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking?
Oh man.
So yes, definitely track your time. And I love that added aspect of the triggers of like what made you change what you were doing. So I'm going to have to add that to my time tracker.
Yeah, definitely. That can be definitely a great source of information as well.
And Tim, any last thoughts from you as the non-entrepreneur spouse?
Well, we didn't get a chance to talk about tolerance studies, tensile calculations, spreadsheet macros, and if anybody wants to get into that, just talk to Anna and ask her to put you in touch with me.
Awesome.
But in terms of what we've actually been talking about, I'd say the only other thing that comes to mind is so making the switch to talking to your significant other about something business related. If you're used to working in an office with a certain group of people, there's probably a set of shared assumptions that you have with your coworkers about what's a good use of time, what's worth doing. Like, you have a sense of what ought to be happening. And it's not always going to be the same set of assumptions that your spouse has. So I think if you find yourself in disagreements about what's worthwhile, you really have to take a step back and identify what's the goal, and develop a shared language to discuss what's important and how you're going to evaluate it, and learn how to identify shortcuts that you might make just dealing with your normal coworkers, because they're not always going to be the same when you're talking about somebody starting their own business.
Ah, I love it. Gold, people. Pay attention. This is coming from the other perspective. Thank you guys so much for being on the show. It was such a joy to have you on. And I'm so glad, Tim, that you came on and showed your support for Anna and shared your perspective on things and your view on things. Because as I said, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that don't get to see that and don't get to hear that because they don't have a supportive spouse at the moment. So I love that. And I mean, stuff like this opens up the option for them to have that conversation with their spouse, and, you know, maybe even get them to watch the video and be like, hey, look at this guy. He says it's cool.
He's great.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We're going to wrap it up, as I know all of the family entrepreneurs out there don't always have a lot of time to sit and watch live videos. So thank you guys so much for coming on. We will post up your links in the edit of the video. And then also, for anyone who's watching this from our business page, make sure you check out our group, the Family Entrepreneur Life. That's our community of family entrepreneurs all in this together. So thank you guys. Everyone have a great night.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Say bye-bye.